Hi, in this video I'm going to share my current progress on my Oracle Wolf build in Fate of the Val. I'm currently level 90 with all the Ascendancy points completed, just to give you some context. We'll start by going through my gear, then the gem setup, and finally the skill tree and Ascendancy, so yeah, let's get into it. Before we begin, keep in mind that I do have a decent weapon for a starter build, so when you're comparing your DPS to mine, make sure you take that into account. Alright, starting with the helmet. First and foremost, before getting into the items, I strongly recommend you running armor plus energy shield basis on all your gear. Maybe pure armor might be an option, but for now and for my limited testing, energy shield and armor seems to maybe be a bit better. For my helmet, I have life and cap resistance with it. For the body armor, it's the same idea, life resistance, and if you can go for some spirit, it would be better. Otherwise, some armor applies to elemental damage is also very strong. For the gloves, mine have a bit of critical damage bonus, some armor, some ES, some life, and some resistances. For boots, once again, armor plus energy shield stuff with movement speed, life, and some resist. Moving to jewelry, my build is very basic, life, armor, and resistance. Both rings are mainly there to fix resistances and add some life and some, chaos res here and there. And my amulet cost me around 5 exalts. It has energy shield, 40 spirit, strength, and dex. I really needed the dex at that time, but now I don't anymore because I tried to do like some shattering palm shenanigans, but it wasn't, smooth. It was far from it, so I stopped. Anyway, that is basically my setup. Now for the weapon, this one is probably the most relevant because it carried my damage very, very, strongly. I dropped it myself. I didn't buy it. I think it would have cost like maybe a div and a half. So nothing really crazy. It has some cold and fire damage, yes, of course, and a bunch of fizz. Also, the +5 to all melee skills gem is very, very good. Usually, this nukes your mana cost, but since I'm blood magic, it's less of a problem. And then a bit of, crit damage that I crafted. Okay, for the gem setup, I'll start with Shred, which is my main single target skill. I'm running Close Combat 2, Rapid Attacks 2, Elemental Armament 2, and Long Fuse 2. Rage 3 also. Most of these are pretty straightforward. Long Fuse is there because the bulk of my Shred damage comes from Ice Fragments. The bulk of my damage comes from the Ice Fragments that Shred creates. And this support gives that 35% more damage. On top of that, it increases the detonation time, which means I don't have to stress about fragments exploding before I can detonate them with Cross Slash, since most bosses do die during the freeze window anyway, in my case, so this just feels very good in practice. The last support here is Rage 3, which I really like. The usual sequence on bosses is I freeze the boss, use Lunar Assault, then Arctic Howl, and then start shredding. At that point, my rage is usually low, so Rage 3 helps me build rage back up while I'm attacking. It also gives us 15% increased attack speed while I'm not at maximum rage, which is extremely important for Shred because attack speed directly determines how many ice fragments you generate, so it's pretty good. Next is Pounce, which I use both as a movement skill and in my marking ability. I'm using Freezing Mark for the extra freeze buildup and the 30% of damage gain is cold once it activates. Eternal Marks makes sure the mark isn't consumed after activation, so I can keep all the bonus stuff. Mark for Death adds extra armor shred, and finally Blazing Critical, which gives 15% damage gain as fire when I critically hit with Bounce, and since I'm effectively at 100% crit chance thanks to my Ascendancy, this is always active. Lunar Assault is my main freeze build-up and clearing skill. I run Deep Freeze for longer freezes, Rapid Attacks 2 to make it smoother and build freeze faster, Rage 3 for the same reasons as before, and Ancestral Call 2 for better clear and coverage. The last support here is Bahatir Vengeance, which is extremely strong. It gives 1% of damage gain as cold for 20 seconds per point of rage. When you freeze an enemy, I'm sitting at around 56 max rage now, so that's roughly 56 extra cold damage when I freeze, which is huge. Arctic Howl is almost never used while mapping. I only use it on bosses. If I had the choice, I would never use it, but that's a bit of a troll. I don't use it to freeze anything anymore. It's just purely there to empower my attacks to be more specific on boss fights. And with Tireless, maybe I proc it a couple of times and it is actually more than 2 empowered attacks. For Raging Attack, a Raging Cry, is there for extra rage gen. Cross Slash is simply my Ice Fragment Detonator. You can put whatever damage supports you want here. It's not doing much anyway. But the fragments are actually what's killing things. So Culling Strike is a nice bonus, but nothing here is very, very, critical or important. You can do whatever you want, I think. Finally, Lunar Blessing is my ultimate. I use Prolonged Duration 2 and Second Wind 2 or 3? 2 or 3? Yeah, Second Wind 3, sorry. With enough skill effect duration on the tree, I can keep this up almost permanently. If you don't have the duration on the tree, you probably need increased cooldown recovery instead. Increased cooldown recovery too. I also use efficiency 2, so it doesn't cost a massive chunk of my life since I'm playing Blood Magic. And for the auras, I'm running Herald of Ice, Blind, Magnified Area, Elemental Armament, and Elemental Focus. Savage Fury with Prolonged Duration 2, and Overwhelming Presence for easier and faster freezes. On top of that, I run Precision in Overwhelming Presence, but you can put it whatever you want, and Vitality 2 to help sustain life. The only reason I run Precision is for bounce, so it doesn't miss, because that's the only one that I use from a bit far. So yeah, that's it. For my Ascendancy points, I started with Lesser Harm and then went into Forced Outcome. Lesser Harm is extremely strong defensively. It smooths out incoming damage and makes enemy critical hits against you very, very rare, which removes a lot of the random damage spikes and one-shots. Forced Outcomes gives you inevitable crits. In simple terms, it makes you crit it makes you crit all the time, but your critical hits deal less critical damage depending on how many rerolls it took to crit. The math on this has been already figured out to a certain extent, so to keep it simple, you want around 20 to 25% base crit chance, and then you stack as much crit damage bonus as possible. With that setup, this node ends up being roughly around 50 to 55% more damage compared to not taking it, so that's worth it. After that, I went for Unseen Path for the extra passive nodes, and finally Entwined Realities, which is where things get really interesting. When you take this node, your keystone creates kind of a circle around itself, and you can allocate any passive node you want without needing it to be connected to your tree, which opens up a lot of powerful option, but powerful because the tree in Path of Exile 2 is not that powerful, so keep that in mind. And that's basically it for the Ascendancy. For the passive skill tree, I'll link it in the description below. It's not 100% finished yet, but it works very well for now. It's a mix of defense, damage, crit scaling, and yep. I started by pathing through this section mainly for the extra defense, then I grabbed all the strong nodes here with crit chance, crit damage bonus, and skill speed. After that, I got into Bestial Rage for rage on melee hit, then branched upward and down toward the bottom to pick up more defensive nodes and stuff like that. One really strong node here is the one that makes increases in reduction to armor, also applies to Energy Shield, which is huge for this setup. From there, I grabbed Spirit of the Wolf and Frozen Claw, along with the nodes leading up to them, which are mostly crit, skill speed, and a bit of damage. I also took Tribal Fury, which gives your strike splash damage and helps with clear. There's also Primal Rage node for maximum rage while shifted, which we always are, so that's free value. Then I picked up more crit nodes here, plus Sigil of Ice and Sigil of Lightning for skill speed and elemental damage. Now, this is where the Entwined Reality setup really comes into play. The 3 keystones I took are Ancestral Bond, Pain, Attunement, and Blood Magic. Ancestral Bond doesn't affect us at all, so it's just free. Pain Attunement by itself is actually very bad for us because it reduces our crit damage, which we really need. However, when we combine it with Blood Magic, it becomes usable because now Pain Attunement, which gives less critical damage bonus while on full life. With Blood Magic, all our skills will cost life instead of mana, which means that whenever we use a skill, we're technically not on full life, so we avoid that downside all of the time. The trade-off is that you're consistently spending life, so you need to sustain it. Right now I'm using Vitality 2, and it works well enough for non-juiced content. It's not the safest setup, but it's fine for now. Later on, I'll probably add Physical Leech on rings and maybe even acuity, Azir's acuity at some point, since we're critting all the time. And we'll have to see. For heavily juiced content, the setup can be sketchy, to be honest. But for T15s and T16s without, going crazy, as long as you're not overdoing, the mods, it works. And yeah, I took all the nodes like you see on here around the keystones. I'll put the skill tree in the description so you can take a look at them. But it's very, very straightforward, so there's really nothing special going on. And yeah, that's it. Pretty much it. If you have any questions, just let me know. And have fun. Bye-bye.